Have you ever taken a wrong turn and found yourself in a place that makes your GPS start apologizing? I'm Jetset Jeremy. I say what most travel influencers won't. There's a smarter way to do this, with fewer selfies, more strategy, and a bit of sarcasm. Today we're exploring 10 American towns that should genuinely come with warning labels. Places where the property prices might look tempting, but trust me, there's always a catch that makes you question your life choices. Before you ask, yes, I am clearly from over the pond, but after 20 years in the States, I've got permanent opinions, a Costco membership, and a drawer full of expired voter registration forms. Picture this scenario. You're driving across America, perhaps considering retirement somewhere affordable, when you stumble upon a town where houses cost less than a decent car. Sounds brilliant, doesn't it? Well, before you start packing your bags, let me tell you why these bargain properties exist. It's rather like finding a restaurant with suspiciously cheap prices. You know there's something dodgy about the meat. Starting our countdown at number 10, we have Barstow, California. Now, I've driven through the Mojave Desert, and let me tell you, it's about as welcoming as a British beach in February. Barstow sits in this blistering wasteland where summer temperatures regularly come close to 110 degrees. That's hot enough to cook a Sunday roast on your car bonnet. But the heat is just the beginning of your worries. Official crime statistics consistently place Barstow well above the national average, which changes the reality of day-to-day life for residents. Imagine trying to enjoy your morning tea when you're constantly checking over your shoulder. The town's primary attractions are truck stops and fast food chains, which is rather like having a cultural district consisting entirely of motorway services. Water quality issues add another delightful twist to Barstow living. Public environmental reports have raised concerns about perchlorate contamination in parts of the local water system, because nothing says retirement bliss like drinking industrial waste with your morning cuppa. Healthcare requires an hour-long drive to the nearest proper hospital, which becomes rather problematic when you're dealing with heat stroke or worse. Number 9 brings us to Pine Bluff, Arkansas, a place where decades of industrial decline have left deep environmental and economic scars. This former agricultural hub now resembles a zombie apocalypse film set, complete with abandoned buildings and environmental hazards that would make Chernobyl look appealing. Pine Bluff hosts one of America's largest toxic waste sites, meaning the air quality rivals that of Victorian London during the Industrial Revolution. The violent crime rate sits 40% above national averages because apparently breathing poison wasn't exciting enough. Walking through Pine Bluff, you see firsthand what happens when investment disappears for an entire generation. Where every boarded-up shop tells a story of dreams deferred, the property prices might tempt budget-conscious buyers, but purchasing a home here is rather like buying a ticket on the Titanic after spotting the iceberg. You're essentially paying to live in an environmental disaster zone with crime statistics that would embarrass Detroit. At number 8, we discover Gallup, New Mexico, a town of crushing contradictions. Picture this. You're surrounded by breathtaking landscapes that would make Lawrence of Arabia weep with joy. Yet the town itself feels like it's been abandoned by hope itself. Gallup showcases rich Native American culture during its annual festival, then spends the remaining 364 days looking like a ghost town with tumbleweeds as the primary entertainment. The poverty rate exceeds 30%, significantly higher than national averages. Local streets feature more pawn shops than a Victorian slum, where desperate residents sell family heirlooms just to afford basic necessities. Substance abuse remains a serious public health challenge for the community, adding another layer of tragedy to an already depressing situation. It's rather like watching a beautiful painting slowly dissolve in acid. If you're budgeting for your next trip but not factoring in travel insurance, especially if you plan to go near any of these places in the video today, you're not saving money, you're just gambling in a very boring way. I use EKTA because getting stranded without coverage sounds inconvenient. Number 7 takes us to Camden, New Jersey, a city that sits across the river from Philadelphia, but feels like it exists in an alternate dimension. Camden was once an industrial powerhouse, and while there have been recent efforts to redevelop Camden, crime remains stubbornly high and deeply embedded in daily life. The crime statistics are so alarming that simply walking down the street feels like participating in a real-life survival game. Violent crime rates make Camden one of America's most dangerous cities. The local attractions include an excellent aquarium and a historic battleship museum, but they're surrounded by neighborhoods where tourists fear to tread. It's rather like having a brilliant restaurant in the middle of a minefield, technically accessible but practically suicidal. I spoke with a retired teacher who's lived in Camden his entire life. He told me with heartbreaking honesty that he stayed hoping the city would recover, but when the factories left, hope departed with them. Now he's surrounded by abandoned houses and can only pray each day brings safety rather than tragedy. Number 6 introduces East St. Louis, Illinois, a place that makes Camden look like a holiday resort. Located across the Mississippi River from St. Louis, this town exists in a parallel universe where progress forgot to stop by. The infrastructure is collapsing faster than British rail schedules, and the crime rate makes international headlines for all the wrong reasons. Local residents joke about having escape routes for drivers who accidentally cross the wrong bridge. Even routine errands can feel stressful for people unfamiliar with the area. As of recent housing data, the median home price hovers around $36,000, which might seem appealing, but you're essentially paying to live in America's answer to a post-apocalyptic wasteland. It's rather like buying property in Mordor and expecting peaceful retirement years. At number 5, we encounter Flint, Michigan, famous for its water crisis that dominated headlines that has never truly been resolved. Imagine waking up each morning knowing that water, the most basic human necessity, remains potentially lethal in your taps. It's rather like living in a house where the foundation might collapse at any moment. Water contamination affected thousands of children with lead poisoning, leading to long-term health effects that public health officials continue to monitor. Meanwhile, unemployment rates soar as the city struggles to rebuild an economy that crumbled when automotive manufacturing departed for overseas locations. Flint represents American industrial decline at its most tragic, where families can't afford to leave but can't safely stay. Number 4 brings us to Gary, Indiana, a town so devastated it resembles a movie set for apocalyptic films. Once a thriving steel town, Gary now stands as a monument to economic collapse. More than half the population has fled over recent decades, leaving behind empty lots, abandoned buildings, and broken dreams scattered like autumn leaves. I've driven past Gary on the way to visit the in-laws a few times, and I remember subconsciously speeding up on the freeway every time. The remaining 75,000 residents struggle against overwhelming odds in a city where hope itself seems to have given up residents. Streetlights remain broken, leaving neighborhoods dark and unwelcoming after sunset. Crime rates stay consistently high, while job opportunities remain virtually non-existent. It's rather like trying to rebuild civilization with half the pieces missing from your construction kit. Number 3 takes us to Stockton, California, proving that even the Golden State has its dark corners. While California conjures images of beaches and prosperity, Stockton represents the state's shadow side. This city filed for bankruptcy, making it one of America's largest municipal failures. Gang violence rivals major metropolitan areas, with crime rates 65% above California averages. I think of the Diaz brothers, UFC fighters from Stockton, who built their careers on pure toughness. They'll tell you that surviving Stockton requires the same mentality needed for professional fighting, constantly staying alert and ready for trouble. That's hardly the peaceful environment most people seek. Number 2 brings us to Atlantic City, New Jersey, a place trapped between former glory and current desperation. Once the crown jewel of East Coast resorts, Atlantic City now resembles a faded photograph of better times. During winter months, the boardwalk becomes eerily empty, showing clear signs of economic strain. I remember walking the boardwalk during off-season when the energy had completely vanished. It felt like exploring an abandoned theme park, where attractions still operate, but the magic has long since departed. The gambling boom that once brought prosperity has ended, leaving behind casinos surrounded by crumbling neighborhoods and economic stagnation. Finally, at number 1, we reach Monroe, Louisiana, where the weather itself seems designed to torture residents. The humidity wraps around you like a wet blanket thick enough to chew, while mosquitoes swarm with the enthusiasm of unpaid interns at a free buffet. Stepping outside immediately triggers perspiration before you've taken 10 steps, making outdoor activities virtually impossible without industrial-strength insect repellent. But weather represents only part of Monroe's challenges. Poverty permeates every street and neighborhood, while unemployment rates remain stubbornly high. The infrastructure feels frozen in the 1970s, with crumbling roads reflecting decades of neglect. Local residents fish for dinner not by choice but necessity, adapting to economic realities through pure survival instinct. The lack of cultural attractions means Monroe feels more like a place you pass through rather than a destination. Sure, Duck Dynasty's Duck Commander operates here, but beyond that, entertainment options remain painfully limited. It's rather like being stuck in a small British village, except without the charm, history, or a decent pub. These 10 towns prove that cheap property prices often hide expensive problems. Whether it's environmental hazards, crushing poverty, violent crime, or simply soul-destroying bleakness, each location demonstrates why bargain hunting for retirement homes requires careful investigation beyond property websites. Let's be blunt, unexpected travel costs will happen. Medical bills abroad, lost luggage, water poisoning, they don't care how carefully you built your spreadsheet. EKTA travel insurance steps in where your planning ends, offering fast, digital-first coverage without mountains of paperwork or fine print that requires a magnifying glass. I've reviewed dozens of insurance options, and EKTA's value to coverage ratio is unmatched for digital nomads and long-haul travelers like you and me. It's like having a safety net you don't feel until you need it, and when you do, you'll be glad you spent less than the cost of one airport sandwich to get it. Click the link below to get covered before your next adventure turns into a financial nightmare. Before you're tempted by low prices, remember that some bargains cost more than expensive alternatives. Sometimes paying premium prices for quality locations represents the wisest financial decision you'll ever make. After all, what good is saving money if quality of life becomes a constant uphill battle? So there you have it, folks, 10 American towns that should definitely come with warning labels. If you've visited any of these places, share your experiences in the comments below. Subscribe if you enjoy travel stories told with fewer filters and more frank opinions. You never know when the next warning label might save your wallet. Until next time, this is Jeremy reminding you to always read the fine print, especially when it comes to choosing where you'll spend your golden years, or any time at all. Cheers.